Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, weiss-sound.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to be doing a little review of the Custom Opto Compressor by Slate Digital. I have a really great relationship with the Slate Digital company. They sent me the Custom Opto a little ahead of release just to get my impressions of it and to see if I would do a review. I love the compressor. I think it's fantastic, so this is going to be that review. So whenever I do a review, I like to do it in the real way that I use the products that I use, because I don't think that just simply going through and being like, oh, this does this is really all that helpful at the end of the day. I mean, I guess in a way it can be, but for me, it's more like, how does this work on a creative level? So I have this record here. I'm going to play you a little bit of a snippet of it. This is more or less how it came in, with a couple little tweaks just to kind of get it to a certain point. But this is basically a pretty raw version of the record.
Fizz and chase your dreams. Before the $1 million pots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where Robbie.
So the artist is Mega Ran. The record, I believe, or the album, I believe, is going to be called Live 95. It's going to be out in September. So this record that I'm working on here, and what I'm using the Custom Opto for, is going to be the actual mix. So what you hear when this comes out is going to be what I am showing you in this video. This is not like a hypothetical demonstration. This is actually the record as it's going to be, which I think makes this a more interesting and more powerful review at the end of the day. So, okay, let's start with just the initial impressions of what needs to happen in the record before we start demonstrating techniques.
Run from your fears and chase your dreams. Before the $1 million pots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
So the backbone of this, in my mind, is actually the break. It could be argued that it's the guitar, but if you listen to the rhythm of the guitar, it's actually jumping the beat a little bit, which is kind of part of what's giving it its vibe. There's a big separation between the vocal and the guitar, which creates this really wide pocket, and it makes the drum break kind of feel like it fits right in the middle, which I think is really, really cool. And I love that. I don't want to change that at all. But I think that the drum break ultimately becomes sort of the backbone of the rhythm driver, as opposed to like the guitar being the real driver of this section. But it is up to interpretation. With that in mind, I think that the drums definitely need a little bit of something, because the kick and low end in general just feel very thin. It feels like a very live break, like something that was recorded back in the 70s, which is really cool. But I want to give it a more modern low end where it has more weight. So before I even get to the compression side of this, it's really important that I actually get the tone right, because I need to know what I'm going to be compressing. If I don't have the drum loop balanced in the way that I think is going to work, then all the compression demonstration in the world doesn't really mean that much. So here I've got the FGS, which is SSL style EQ, and I'm just basically boosting the living heck out of the low end. I think I'm at around like 80 hertz. Oh no, 114 hertz, and I've got the knob turned all the way to the right, so 15 decibels right there. And I don't think that that by itself is actually bad. I think that even without any compression, it kind of works in the record.
Pots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way.
But I don't feel like there's a ton of connection when we hear it with the rest of the record in general. It sounds like very separate hits. So like when we hear it in solo, we can hear the glue between the drums. Like, we hear the room tone around the kick, we hear all of the dynamics really well, but when we hear it in the record, I feel like the snare feels like it's a little spiky and maybe a little thin. The kick and the snare and the hat all feel kind of a little separate, so it doesn't feel like a very gelled groove.
Pots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way.
So right off the bat, one of the things I might be thinking is, hey, if I give it some compression, maybe I can create this like bend between the different hits. So I can bring up some of the room tone and some of the hats that'll help glue the whole line together, create like maybe a little bit of a bend in the sustain of everything and the space between the hits to give it a little bit more connectivity and a little bit more groove. So I'm going to throw on the custom opto, and then I'm going to basically reverse engineer what I already did. So without, then with. And you hear pretty quickly that the kick drum in particular has this kind of like boom that it starts doing, this boom where the ambience sort of fills up the space and connects you to the snare. And that's really, really important for the groove of the record and for the drums. Like, it changes the way my physical reaction occurs. Without the compression, it's very like nodding to the beat, and then with the compression, it's more like sliding with the beat. Like there's more of an ebb and flow to it. And that typically is how I like to hear my drums most of the time, so this is not really an exception for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up another instance of the custom opto and sort of just give my working process and my thoughts along with it as I'm going through it. So I'm going to start with no peak reduction. I'm going to try and kind of level match it here. All right, cool. So that's more or less level matched. The very first thing that I noticed about the custom opto is that there's this really, really, like, really beautiful, actually, mid-range tone that shows up. It's like maybe centered around about 800 hertz, which is that frequency that's kind of like just a little warmer than our 1K center. So it has this like very earthy way and like natural way of bringing things forward by sort of exaggerating that range in a subtle kind of like subtle saturation sort of way. Right off the bat, like hearing that tone, that's going to pull anything forward in the record. So I'm thinking lead vocals for sure, because just the tone of it's going to pull it forward. But I'm also thinking that anything that's supposed to sit back in the track, this is probably going to be not the best compressor for, because sometimes we don't want things to necessarily be very far forward. But I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be really good on acoustic guitar, because that range between about 600 hertz to 1K is where like so much of the magic and like beautiful tones of an acoustic guitar live, but there's so much resonance there, it's really hard to bring that tone out. So I'm thinking this is going to be great on acoustic guitars. Upright bass, oh my gosh, upright bass, this is going to sound like amazing just from the tone of it. You know, hi-hats that might need some weight. So these are kind of my thoughts as I'm hearing it for like just gut instinct, what would I be putting this on? But in this particular case, I wanted to test it out on the drums because I was giving it a trial go. So it might not be necessarily my immediate go-to for drums based on tone, but what's more important than the tone actually is the action of the compression. And for that, I was able to get something that I really, really like, and I don't know how easily I would be able to get it if I was using a different compressor. So, you know, that's pretty darn cool. So usually when I'm setting up compression, first of all, I have to have a goal in mind. I'm not just putting compression on something to put compression on something. I think that that's a huge mistake that a lot of engineers who are just learning kind of do. They sort of go, oh, compression's the secret, so compress. But you have to have an aim and a goal. So for me, I'm thinking the movement of the drums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by having the speed and the ratio up really as fast as it can go and as heavy as it can compress, and I'm going to start digging into it, and I'm going to start experimenting to hear what sort of happens as I start to tweak the controls. So even kind of as like a limiter, you kind of hear that leading edge of the kick doing that cool thing. Like it's already just immediately lending itself to create that sort of boom bappy kick that I really love as a tone and as a texture. So what I'm going to start doing now is slowing the speed down to see if I can get the feel to be less like one consistent streamline and more like it's got an ebb and a flow, like a bend to it. That's going to come from slowing the attack down and the release down, which happen to be connected in the same control in this particular compressor. And you can hear that once I get down into this like less than 50% range, there's something that happens that's very, very interesting on the kick specifically. You start to hear the pump action of the compression because the release is now slow enough to start making the gain attenuation and gain restoration obvious. And there's a, typically speaking, we think of this sort of being able to hear the release action as being like a flaw of compression. But if you time it right and you get the feel of it right, it actually becomes a really, really cool rhythmic device. So it's sometimes the things that we think of as being not good are actually exactly the things that are good. So I'm going to throw it up to a faster speed, and then I'm just going to like quickly move it down to a slower speed so that we can hear the difference between the space in between the kicks and the snares. And if it's not obvious to the ear, it's really one of those things where you have to kind of just feel it out. Like the way that I do this is always something where I feel it in my body more than I necessarily like hear it in my ear. So once I've got the general action of the compression going and it's giving me more what I'm looking for, that's when I start to mess around with like how strong I want the compression to be, how much peak reduction I'm gonna do. The peak reduction here ties normally in this setup would tie the ratio and threshold together, but in this particular case it's really just going to work as a threshold control for the most part, or at least that's what my ear is telling me. I could be wrong. So I'm going to dig in a little bit more, and I'm going to see how much juice I can really get from this thing. And the other thing that's really cool about what happens when I start to dig in is now I can go back to my speed control and experiment a little bit, and I can figure out like, okay, now that I'm really doing an exaggerated amount, what is the speed actually really giving me rhythmically? It's going to give me a very exaggerated amount of that. If I jump over to like the faster speeds again, you can hear how that's not really doing any favors to the rhythm. But if I slow it down, you still hear that bend in the rhythm, even if it's like way too much compression and everything is feeling like it's just underwater from being held down so much. It's still giving me that bend and that change in pressure that I was looking for, that was happening at any amount of compression. So I really like what I'm getting here. It's now just too much. So I'm going to turn the ratio down a little bit, just so that it lets off, but I'm not going to go completely down to where I think it should be, because I still want there to be heavy compression on this, and what I want to start doing is experimenting with these tone controls to see what they start giving me. So my experience messing around with the tone controls, I'm not really totally positive exactly what they're doing, but what I believe they're doing is EQing the detector of the custom opto. And what that means is that in a compressor, we typically think that there's one signal. There's the signal that is getting compressed, and that's what the compressor is reacting to, but that's not really how compressors work. There's actually two signal paths. There's the main signal path, and then there's something called the side chain, or the detector circuit. And that's what the compressor is reacting to. It's acting on the main signal, but it's reacting to the sidechain. Now, typically speaking, in most compressor designs, by default, the signal that comes in is going to be the signal that goes to the detector, but you can change things along the detector path, and I think that that's what's happening here. I think this is changing the EQ curve so that as we go through this, flat is flat. Smooth to me seems to take out a little bit of the upper mids, or maybe round out a little bit of the upper mids and some of the highs. So I think what's happening is that it's actually exaggerating the upper mids and the highs going into the detector circuit. I think it's also changing the exact onset of the speed controls, but I'm not 100% positive, because changing the tone of the sidechain could be easily mistaken for doing the same thing, because the upper mids and the treble is where the fastest parts of the attack of most signals is. So it sounds like the onset of the attack and release of the compressor also change a little, but I'm not sure how much of that is a mechanism of actually changing the timing constants and how much of it is actually changing what the detector is hearing tone-wise. But at the end of the day, none of that really matters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this up to 200% to really exaggerate what's going into the sidechain, and then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to hear what the results do, because that's really what makes the difference, right? At the end of the day, it could be any mechanism, but what matters is what we hear. So let's try it going from flat to smooth, and I'm just going to go through and kind of give some ideas. And you hear that, maybe this is a little too low. Let's turn out the output gain a little bit just so we can hear everything a little bit more clearly. You can hear that when I switch over to smooth, the high end seems to like really round out. The snare in particular becomes very subdued. The hats seem to dip a little bit lower. The kick seems to stay the same or even become slightly exaggerated. So this is what's making me think that the sidechain is getting a big old boost to the upper mids and high end when I switch to smooth. And so the compressor is therefore reacting to the things that would be harsher and therefore smoothing the signal. Kind of makes sense. My suspicion is that warm is doing something similar. But there's a time constant difference that's pretty noticeable between smooth and warm. There's almost the same tone curve between smooth and warm, but warm seems to retain a little bit more of the leading edge of the kick and the snare. So just listen to like the texture of the attack. I know that's a weird thing to focus on, but like hear roundness in the smooth setting and hear like a slight degree of a slightly sharper tone, like sharper in terms of the attack, like more spikiness in the warm tone. It's not like spiky, but it's slightly more edgy. You see what I mean? It's still like, compared to flat, it's still rolling off some of that top end. But it's got more of that like hard edge on the attack. So I think that it's very similar to smooth, but it's got something going on with the timing constants that happens in smooth that doesn't happen in warm. It's the same timing constant that I hear in flat, just a slightly different tone curve. All right, let's check out aggro. Here, I get a lot of leading edge on the attack, so I do think that there's some kind of a time constant happening here. I think that it's like hardening the knee or something like that. I hear like a slightly different tone curve than flat as well, but it's hard to tell if that's an artifact of the time constant changing or if it's an artifact of something happening in the sidechain that's a little bit different. There is a different tone, but it's hard to point out exactly what it is. It feels like the 1K range is kind of getting exaggerated a little bit, like 1 to 2K. So maybe what's happening is that some of the low end is being taken out of the sidechain, and that's what's causing this to have this sound specifically. And then the last one is Airy, and Airy is fortunately one that's pretty obvious what's happening, which is nice. And you hear all of the hats, all of the leading edge of the snare all come right back in. The treble seems to really become exaggerated. And I'm pretty sure that all that Airy is a low pass filter in front of the sidechain. So it's just letting all the hats and everything come through. But it's great having all of these tone controls because you notice how different I can set them and get completely different results in terms of what I'm bringing out. In a way, I can almost think of these tone controls as like an EQ that doesn't have any kind of phase interaction because it's not actually using EQ to change the tone. It's what it's allowing to pass through the compressor more readily, which changes the tone. So if I want something to be brighter, I can simply allow more of the brightness through by using the Airy setting. Or if I want something to really round out and become a lot like gooier, I can use the smooth setting. And these tone controls actually can become a really, really valuable tool in the world of mixing. And I think that spending a little bit more time with this in the tone controls is really going to open up a whole world of possibilities for me. Anyway, that said, the sound of the drums has like its own sound to it, and I really like the sound of the drums, so I'm not actually going to use any of the other tone controls. I landed on flat because I felt like the drum had the right tone curve to begin with. Just what it sounded like is what it sounded like, and it was really, really good. So I stuck with that, and then it's just a matter of getting the ratio down to where I feel like I'm getting the right amount of bend in the compressor. And this is what I settled on because I felt like the drums were handing off the rhythm to each other when it had this connectivity. And it's like, I like it more even when it's not as loud sounding. And that's always a good sign. Anytime something feels like it's quieter, but you still like it more, that's pretty much means you like it more. And then lastly, there's this parallel mix knob here. I felt like once I threw it into the actual mix,
Hots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me.
it felt heavier to me, like the compression felt a little bit more aggressive than it did when it was in solo. So I just used this mix knob to kind of bring some of that original signal back in, and ultimately I landed on a setting basically like this.
Hots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree.
All right, I'm going to switch back to what I originally had.
Hots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made.
And then if we listen to what I originally had with the drums versus what I ended up with, you're going to notice a pretty dramatic difference.
Hots, we would do it for free. Golden eye, late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where Robbie at. Down the block at the bodega.
Now, I might do a little bit more EQ to this just to sort of take a little bit of the hardness of the upper mid out and maybe like allow maybe some more of the low end to, like the warmer side of the low end to come through, something like that. But I think this is pretty close to how it's going to end up in the final record. It might actually already be what's going to be in the final record. So I'm really happy with that. I want to jump over to the lead vocals here because I think that's going to be the other place where how I'm using the custom opto in this record is really going to shine. The lead vocals already were tracked with some compression. I think that's pretty obvious.
Late nights, almost blew my degree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
But there's still like a good amount of peaks that are slipping through that I think ultimately are going to make the vocal a little bit weaker than it could be, because in order to get the vocal to be up and level and compete with those really bright aggressive drums, I'm just going to need more consistency in the vocal. If I just turn it up, all of those peaks are going to snap out of the record, and it's going to feel like it hasn't really been all glued together. Whereas if I can control those peaks and then bring the level up, that's going to allow me to move the vocal forward in a way that competes more without ever stepping out of the record. In addition, having just the natural tone of the custom opto, I think is going to help bring the vocal forward and make it a little bit more competitive in a way that doesn't feel separate from the record because of that mid-range thing that's happening, that like 800 hertz-ish saturation. So I'm going to just bring in my processing all at once just so you can kind of hear what was happening. And then I'm going to break down all of the different ideas because, again, none of the processing is happening in a box. It's all sort of interrelated. So before then after.
Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where I be at. Down the block at the bodega or the laundromat. Putting quarters on the cab to claim I had next. Street Fighter 2, NBA Jam, we catch wreck. Around the same time, bit by the radioactive bug. Hip hop, heavy cutting and acting tough. Started dabbling.
And one of the things that's really important to note as well is that once I bring the vocal forward, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's changing in level so much. It just feels like it's feeling a little bit stronger in the mix. And it also has this way of kind of like subtly smoothing out what I didn't like about the drums still. The vocal kind of interacts with the drums in a way that warms up the record overall, which is a really cool effect. It means I'm not going to have to do as much tweaking to the drums after all. So one more time.
Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where I be at. Down the block at the bodega or the laundromat. Putting quarters.
It's pretty darn cool. I'm not going to lie. Okay, so I'm going to break down the earlier parts of the processing here because we need to get to the compression before we get to the compression. You know what I'm saying? You picking up what I'm putting down? All right, so just some basic EQ stuff. Honestly, it was tracked pretty well, but it does have this very like raw sound to it. I don't think that there was any EQ on the way in. So all I'm doing here is I'm taking a little bit of top end up. I'm taking a little bit of like the harsher part of the treble down as a response to that boost that I'm doing in the top end. So I'm balancing the top end. And then I'm taking out some of the like weird kind of woofiness that's happening in the mid-range. There's something that's like a little bit like a resonance or something in there that's a little bit much. And other than that, you know, maybe just a tweak to like the tiniest tweak to the low end. Yeah, like half a dB down, getting shelved off of low end. So very, very tiny tweak to the low end. I'll give you the before and after. Here we go.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where I be at. Down the block at the bodega or the laundromat. Putting quarters on the cab to claim I had next. Street Fighter 2, NBA Jam, we catch wreck.
So it's not really all that different, actually. It's pretty similar. There's a sort of 1K tone that in like a pop record I would probably want to ease off a little bit, kind of balance out, but I sort of like that extra bit of 1K. It really reminds me of old school hip hop, like 90s hip hop, where there was just like that extra forwardness, the U87 forwardness going on in the vocal, and I kind of want to keep that because I think that it helps it cut, gives it a little bit of attitude. So I'm kind of just leaving it, and I think that I'm not going to smooth it out later. All right, so then the next thing I'm doing is I felt like while there is a color to the capture here, it did feel a little bit bland. So I'm using this FG73 to give it a little color. I'm also using it as a gain stage before the custom opto. So the before and after is not really going to be, here, let's see, minus 713. Let's remember minus 713 real quick, guys. So I'll give you the before and after. This is very subtle.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
Right, like that's barely noticeable, but it is just a subtle amount of saturation to kind of help it be a little bit stronger. That's not really going to make or break anything in the record, though. And then gain stage before the custom opto. So here we go with the custom opto, the before and after. What's the best way to do this? Because I'm using this sort of as makeup.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
For the before and after, what I can do is I can kind of match it with this trim control. So let's do that. What am I doing? It's 711. Okay, let's do the 711 right there. Okay, there we go. So this is our before.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
And here's the after.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day.
So, I mean, those are about the same level overall, but it definitely feels stronger with the custom opto. And I want to point out the settings. I'm not going to walk through exactly how I got to them because I think it's fairly straightforward. But basically, because this is not a hard limiter, I can set it up as if it's a limiter and use it as like a soft limiter, so to speak. The natural curve of it, especially having it set to the warm tone, as opposed to like flat or aggro or airy, is going to help control the peaks. Smooth would help control the peaks the most, but it ended up overly rounding things. But the warm was a really nice compromise. But basically, I have this set as fast as I possibly can, so the speed is on 10. And the ratio is on 10, and I've got the peak reduction knob just like ever so slightly catching the top uppermost peaks, and what it's doing is just kind of subtly rounding them out by a few dB, and that's just keeping everything inside that range that will help me find a level where I can set it and it will always feel like it's glued in the record. It will never feel like, it's jumping out of the speakers at me. So that allows me to get it more competitive in the mix.
Agree. Can't quite pinpoint what made me feel this way. Deontay, still playing games to this day. Before that, you would know where I'd be at.
And you can kind of see by the meter, like I'm never really doing any serious amount of gain reduction. It's always just a couple dB. It's always in that range with maybe a few moments where it's an exception. But basically, this is just like a final limiter on the vocal, but it sounds a little nicer than like a brick wall limiter because it has a bend to it and an onset to the attack that lends itself to being a little bit more graceful. All right, final thoughts here. So I just wanted to show you a couple of places where I'm using this compressor here and now because I like to show techniques, not just review the compressor in like a box. But I think that there are going to be a lot of other places where I'm going to be using this compressor. I see it as being like a really great compressor for lead vocals in general, whether it's rap or whether it's singer-songwriter, and just like for the rap stuff, using it more as like a soft limiter. For singer-songwriter stuff, using it more as like a gentle sanding compressor, like something that kind of ebbs and flows with slower time constants. I think that the very specific bowing that I was able to get rhythmically on the drum break, I think anytime I want that kind of an action, I don't believe that there will be a replacement for this compressor. I think that this compressor has that unique capability of getting that action. I think even on Mixbus, I think most of the time I probably wouldn't be using this compressor on Mixbus, but for that like certain genre where singer-songwriter intersects indie pop, and it wants to have this very gooey, rounded, kind of glowy flavor, this compressor is going to be a really, really great pick for that because it's going to do that uniquely. Gosh, there's probably a lot of places where I'm going to end up experimenting with this, but I think it's going to live on my lead vocals primarily, and I think that it's going to find itself on drums fairly often. Anyway, I'm going to cap this all off by saying if you dig what I'm doing here on this channel, hit that like button. If you want to catch more of these videos, hit subscribe with the bell notification so that you get notified. And remember, we are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.